Hey guys, don't forget the 2023 Street Cop Training Conference, Nashville, Tennessee, April 23rd through the 28th. You do not want to miss this. So far, guest speakers, Rob O'Neill, the Navy SEAL that was responsible for killing Osama bin Laden, Kyle Carpenter, U.S. Marine, Medal of Honor recipient, jumping on an IED to protect his platoon. Fox News host Tommy Lahren returns for 2023. Sheriff Wayne Ivey, Sheriff Mark Lamb, Sheriff David Clark, and more to come. You don't want to miss this event. We additionally have 20 of the country's top law enforcement educators giving you the best experience of your life. You will leave this event knowing more about your job and how to be proficient at the things you do, hands down, in any other event that you'll ever attend. I personally guarantee it. Don't miss out. There's a room code at streetcop.com for our room block, and room code at the Gaylord at Opry is where the event's taking place. Don't miss out on a discounted rate. The rate is from Sunday to Thursday. Put that in and find yourselves at a half-price room. Split it with a friend, but make sure you get there. You don't want to miss this event. It is going to be that good. If you trust me and you trust Street Cop, trust that you will leave there feeling like you've had an experience of a lifetime.
111, 110.
You training to be a street cop?
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Street Cop Training Podcast. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Street Cop Training. My name is Dennis Bonino. And today I have with me somebody who wanted to come on here and give a lot of thought behind PTSD and help the community from the sincere bottom of his heart, Travis Gribble. Travis, give us the 2-minute version of who you are, your experience, and maybe some of the mission as well.
So, Travis Gribble, retired sergeant out of Mesa PD in Arizona, 24 years in law enforcement. I started in Michigan, spent about 11 years there, and had always had a big desire to go and work for a large agency. So was searching around the country, in Mesa in Arizona they had one of the best programs as far as accepting lateral officers with experience. We started out with 4 years on the pay scale. So I took the leap and ended up in Arizona. So was also chasing a dream. I was part-time SWAT on a low operational tempo team in Michigan, but always wanted to work for an active team, and they had one. So shortly after I got there, I pursued the SWAT career and was fortunate to make the team and spend a lot of years on that to finish out my career. So, and now, I dealt with, it was one big call in 2016, actually the first day of when I promoted, and didn't deal with it accordingly, and went through 6 years of, just a lot of bullshit, didn't handle my stuff, was still performing exceptionally well at work, but, personal life was falling apart. And then finally, when I finally got my knees taken out from under me in 2021, I got the help that I needed. And now I'm just having a voice to try to help people, lessons learned, just like we do with SWAT teams. You do a debrief and figure out, hey, what did we do right and what could we do better?
What was the transition like from Michigan to Arizona?
So it was huge. So I worked for a very small agency back in Michigan. I think we had 13, 14 people on the road at that time. So it was a typical big area to patrol, but for a small agency, to where, the night shift, we had 600 square miles and we'd have 2 people on. We had some small little villages that would have maybe one officer on sometimes nobody. And then the state police, if they were available, they would, come and help. But it was a rural community. And then, went to Mesa, which, if you're not familiar, is just outside of Phoenix. Right now, there are about 520,000 people, and the department's in the mid 800s for officers. So big city policing, just loved it. Went in working graveyards, which is our night shift, and just threw myself at it. So
you were happy with it. You were happy with the transfer there.
Oh, absolutely. Because I'm just an adrenaline junkie, chasing bad guys. Got hooked up with a really good squad on night shift. That's what actually helped the doors open to get on SWAT. A lot of the guys were SWAT at the time. And so we just had a blast. So it was a lot of fun.
How do you like Arizona overall? Are you still there?
No, I actually 7 months ago, prior to me retiring, my wife and I had made a plan. We wanted to move to Montana. So we had bought 14 acres up in a little town called Phillipsburg. which is about an hour and 15 away from Missoula. And when my retirement happened, we decided to make the move. So now we're in Montana. So
the reason I asked that is I'm looking at the decor in the background and I'm saying this is not conducive to an Arizona house.
It is not. Yeah. Arizona's great. Obviously, I don't miss the heat. That's actually part of the reason why I was chose to work night shift, because even though it was still warm, at least the sun's not beating on you nonstop. So, but yeah, they have a lot to offer. PD, a lot of opportunities for training. They're very progressive. So I really enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that police department. So my brother-in-law is on Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. So
I think I've heard you say that. Right on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got pretty good context of the area. And I just did a class last November in Scottsdale, but we'll be coming back there probably in 2023. Good. So we had a big group in Scottsdale that came out, and I put the show on for them, and they went out and did some good things with it, which was great. So yeah, I'm familiar with the area. I've been going there for quite a few years. Yeah. And I might have an addiction to the Scottsdale nightlife. I've never seen anything like it.
It is crazy. Yeah. I stayed away from there after you when you move there, you get your little fill of Scottsdale, and then it's like, yeah, I don't not want to go down there, but I see visitors and they love it. It has a ton to offer. So you will not be bored.
Oh my God. It's a wild place. Yeah,
it is. Absolutely.
That's cool. So what happened in 2016?
So shortly after I came to Mesa, they give you years of experience to be able to test for the SWAT. It's usually 3 years on patrol before you can test, but because I was a lateral and had experience, I could do it in a year and a half. Tested for the team, made it. A short time after going on to the team, about 6 months, it was decided by the executive staff that we were going to go full time because we were very high operational, doing, just under 300 operations a year. And so the patrol commanders, as much as they hated it, they're like, yeah, take these guys off our books because they're never around anyways. They're always going to search warrants, getting called out. So I went full time, did my 6 years in that, and actually was an assistant team leader. But then we're always trying to figure out, like, hey, we see that one of our team leaders is going to retire or they're going to promote to lieutenant. We try to make a way for the next leadership to have come up through the team. So I was one of the ones that was willing to take the risk and say, because there's no guarantees you're coming back. Because once you test and promote to sergeant, you have to go back to patrol for at least a year. So I tested and tested number one on the list. And I think there's like 40 people. So my first day on the job in 2016, literally the first call out of the gate. So I was in what's called the STEP program. And it's not extremely organized, but they put you with a senior sergeant just to show you the ropes, the paperwork, scheduling, those types of things, administrative duties. So first call out of the gate, we get just a peculiar call of a guy said he went over to meet another guy for sex. And during the course of that interaction, he told the guy that, hey, I also have a young girl here if you'd be interested. So this guy wanted nothing to do with it. And we're dealing with, obviously, drug scene, all that. Guy makes a phone call. And, you get calls like that in the big city. And a lot of times it just doesn't get you hyped up. You're like, okay, we'll see if this even turns out. I start going to the scene and a heads up patrol guy, because this guy that called in to say it, he would not give his location, said he didn't want to meet an officer because he's involved in the criminal activity. He doesn't want to. Probably had drugs on him, didn't want anything to do with it. So a heads up patrol officer is driving by a park, and this is in a good neighborhood, and he sees a guy pacing back and forth, and he's on the phone. This heads up patrol officer goes and make contact with this guy, and sure enough, it's the caller. So now this call becomes a little bit real. He starts getting details, and come to find out, he said he had this girl there. I never saw the girl, but I felt like something was wrong. So we go there and, we're staying out of sight. Patrol lieutenant shows up and, I'm the new sergeant. I have a senior sergeant with me. And I'm sure you've seen it in your line of work. So we have a lieutenant that is really trying to find every reason why we don't go and make contact there. Well, this is a no-brainer. I had confidence from being on the SWAT team that, no disrespect, but hey, LT, we can definitely go do a knock and talk. Let's just see what happens. So he finally let us go ahead with that plan. And then I took, I guess because I was a SWAT guy, they let me take 4 guys up with me, and we went up to knock on the door. So we go ahead and knock on the door. Guy opens up, and he's dressed like a female, just exactly like this guy described. And just things were odd, like it didn't add up. So we went ahead and grabbed him, pulled him out onto the porch, and due to exigent circumstances, I said, "Hey, we're searching the house." So we go into the house, and I tell as soon as we go to the right, I see a closet door. So I told the other patrol guys, I said, "Hey, I'll hold on that. You guys finish searching. When you get done, we'll check this closet." So they search and they find nothing. So then I open the closet door, and like a long closet, and it's full of trash. You can imagine just a dirty apartment, right? So I look down in front of me, and I see something weird with a bag. So after I cleared, I felt pretty good. I holstered, and I go to grab the bag. When I grabbed the bag, a little girl's head popped up. She's duct taped with a mouth, hands and feet, and she's sitting. It's literally a black garbage bag, and she's sitting in her own feces and urine. So we pull her out of there, get her unbound, and then the aftermath starts. So I can't even explain that, just what went through my head at that time, just the horrific. You hear about a lot of things that law enforcement officers go through, but to find that and know what she has been through, it shocked my soul. The chief of police came out and said, at that time, he's 28 years. He says, "I've never seen a case this disturbing," because it went on from there to where, there was stuff on computers. This girl was being trafficked, and her mother, this was actually a babysitter, quote unquote, that her mom would drop her little girl off to this guy knowing full what was happening and leave her there for the weekend. So it was just soul shocking. The sergeant that was with me, and no, this is no dig by any means, but he couldn't continue in the call. So I took the call from there, handled the debrief. If you can imagine that kind of call, numerous detectives show up on scene, patrol commanders. It's a big deal. And then carry it out from there, go to the hospital, be with her, find out, unfortunately, all the extent of the injuries and probably the disgusting things that she's had to go through. And yeah, it was just tragic. But I didn't say that it bothered me, but it was soul shocking. And, at that time, I've heard you talk about a little bit before that I was one of the guys in policing that I made it a point to demean people that went forward with help, demean people that said, "Hey, this call got to me. I got to do something about it." So I was definitely not going to take that step. And, it was frowned upon at our agency. So
there are not many moments in my life where I've felt sick to my stomach and speechless and panicky. And, I was writing down before when you were talking, and 2 things that I wrote was the importance of caring.
Yeah.
So a lot of people come into this profession and they get jaded and, maybe blow a call like this off or don't want to follow up because they don't know what to do. And I think this is a perfect example of the things that I advocate for, of why you have to care, right? Because it's not about you. It's not about your perception of what you saw on Fox News. It's about the person who needs the police to show up. So having that enthusiasm to go the extra mile was important. And then the second part of it is, I've often said to people, and this gets misconstrued at times, but bad administrations are criminals' best friends. You had a lieutenant who almost cost this girl probably her life.
Absolutely.
On a bad call, just because this guy was in a position with bars in his collar, didn't make him the right person to be making the decisions out here. And I'm glad that you were persistent, and I'm sure she was. So like that's the rub for a lot of us, is like there's so many of us that care and so many that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have that balance of understanding what our job is, why it's important to show up and do it the way that it's being done. And, outside of all the stigma that you've endured from this, think about how important that job was.
Right.
It was worth your sacrifice, Travis. It was worth your sacrifice.
Yeah. And I agree. And that was part of, once I finally went and got help in 2021, that was part of the reshaping of how I looked at this call to help me get through. So, yeah, I mean, just to, bring you up to speed. So I didn't go get help. It wasn't talked about. My training sergeant, great guy, taught me a lot. However, he did not want to talk about it. The only thing our agency did, or you've seen them, the big debriefs where they bring in some sort of grief counselor, and there's 50, 60 people that were involved in the call there. And they say, hey, who wants to share? Of course, that's not the right environment where that's going to happen. I don't even know, honestly, why we still do those things, because I've never seen them to be real successful. And then, so that was it. But from that moment on, I had been through, by that time, I had already been 20 years or 18 years in law enforcement. I've seen a lot. And I always used to say to myself, number one, I do have a belief in God that, hey, maybe God protects our minds at times, for the trauma that we see. But then I'd also jokingly say, man, is there something wrong with me that some of this stuff I have seen has not knocked me out? But it was just my way of coping. There's probably things that I should have sought some help on, and just to try to work through some cases. And so from that point on, didn't get any help until 2017. I was dealing with things. I would drink heavily because I had a hard time going to sleep. So thinking that, okay, it's making me go to sleep quicker. However, we all know now, and I know now from studying it, like, you're not getting good sleep. It's just a 2 or 3 hours and you wake up. I was having night terrors. The calls that I would go to involving children, which had never affected me, now affected me. Specifically, we had a couple murder-suicides, one where the child was killed, the other where the child witnessed his mother being killed. Those types of things started to affect me different, to where I'd go home and I would always go back to that case. I was obsessed with this case, to where I was constantly contacting the detectives, who, since now there's been a couple of them that they went out because unfortunately they had to investigate the things they found on the computer. And it was in the news constantly. And it was on my mind constantly. So I did finally, in 2017, I went through, one of the benefits of having a large agency, we do have a peer group, even though it's understaffed. But I went there and said, hey, I knew the guy. I said, who's our counselor that we're using? So he gave me a name, and I went, and I wasn't real honest, to be quite frank. I'd go in there, give a few details, said, hey, I think I'm drinking too much. His response was, well, don't drink as much. There was no, how do I stop doing this? Like, these things are bothering me. I didn't tell him about the call initially. I said I was having problems sleeping, these types of things. 2016, or prior to that, I went through a divorce. So I was talking to him a little bit about that. And then each time I'd go in, and it wasn't regularly, I think I went in 4 times before I finally went and got real help, I would give a little bit more detail. And then, things started to add up. I'd get back on the team. I was struggling. I loved patrol. I had a good group of guys. Actually, there's 7 guys now on our full-time team that worked for me on graveyards as a sergeant. They're just guys that I mentored that wanted to do SWAT. I helped them get there. And so I had a great time doing that, but I was still dealing with all these, issues personally. And I have never been a guy that came into work and, shared my personal life. I just was not. I could shut it down. I'd show up on shift, and you would think everything was perfect all the time, because I'm just ready to go catch bad guys. Let's find the felons. Let's do some good stuff. I hope it's busy tonight. I don't want it to be slow. So as far as work performance, none of my supervisors, I don't think, would have ever seen anything, because I wasn't close friends with any of my supervisors. So I get back on the team in 2019, and I'm thinking, they bring me back as a team leader. Like, okay, I'm going to get away from this stupid patrol shit that I'm having to see these murders, suicides, all this. Yes, I'll, have some hostage rescues, things like that. But I was thinking, okay, I'm getting back to my brothers because our team was extremely tight. Like, these are my guys. So I get back. We were busier than ever. I threw myself at work because that was a place where if I was busy, then I'm not thinking about stuff. Like, give me another call. Yeah, I'm not on call this week. Well, guess what? I'm coming to the barricade. I'm coming to the hostage rescue. I want to just immerse myself into work to try to deal with the shit that was going on in my head. From there, we had some pretty significant cases, and I could tell things were blowing up. I did get remarried, and my wife, she was an officer, and just so happens she was a detective in the Internet Crimes Against Children division. And they were the only division at that time that was mandated to go get checkups through a counselor once every 3 months, which is a great idea because you imagine the things that they're seeing. However, they are looking at things all day long, but I think it also minimizes like what our patrol guys and gals go through every day, the stress and the things that they're having to see. Well, she started telling me like, hey, we have this counselor we really love, and you should go see her. And I knew a couple of her fellow detectives, these guys that were just these stone cold, no emotion. And I'm like, hey, this guy likes her. Like, yes, they love her. They go back to her. They really found a connection. I kept saying, okay, I'd go. Kept blowing it off. But she's seeing that, you are still struggling with shit a lot. Like, this is an old call. Well, then we go back on a vacation in the fall of 2020. She's from Ohio, me being from Michigan. We spend a couple of weeks seeing friends and family. And I have a couple big emotional breakdowns when I'm back, to where to close friends, I start talking about the story and just lose it, just sobbing. And both of them are like, hey, man, you probably should go talk to somebody about this. This shit's going on. So my wife was telling me like, yep, you need to get into, Jennifer was her name, the counselor. And I even called my SWAT lieutenant, I'm very good friends with, and I told her, and the weird connection is she was actually involved with that case I was, and, she's dealt with it too. And I said, hey, Diana, I'm struggling with this. I had a couple things. I'm good to go for work because I had to make that known. Like, no one's taking me offline, right? And so I said, I'm good, but I think I'm going to go get some help when I get back. She's like, yeah, Travis, you should. Well, I get back. We're still busy. I keep pushing off. The holidays come. And finally, after the first of the year, I make an appointment, and she's busy. So it was going to be a couple months out, actually. And so we're in March of 2021. And we had some pretty significant cases. We had a parental custodial case where we were working with our violent offender unit where the dad kidnapped the little girl. And we were literally on him for 38 hours trying to find him. And he was making real vague threats, but at times like, hey, if I have to bring her back, neither one of us are coming back. He's putting it out there that like, no, this is not going to end well, right? So we finally get set up on him. And we're literally going to go get ready and be ready to conduct a hostage rescue. Well, he somehow gets on someone's cover, got blown, whatever it may be, and he gets out with the little girl in a vehicle. And we're all in unmarked cars. And a pursuit takes place throughout Phoenix. Well, he's on the phone. He calls into our negotiators. We give him a number while he's driving. And he's saying, statements that this girl is not going to make it if you don't let me go. So I make it very well known. I'm running we had like 2 4-man cars ready to take him off wherever it needs to be. And he's making statements. He's going to get her into a house. And I tell the guys, like, he is under no circumstances. He is not getting her into a structure. You guys got to stop this. He gets out of a vehicle and he's threatening and tells people that he does have a gun. Well, he pulls into a gas station in Phoenix and he makes exit for a minute, and we think we're going to be able to take him. Well, he makes his way back towards the little girl in the car, and one of our SWAT guys kills him right there, ends it. Perfectly good shoot, but to watch this little girl, and we just took her dad out right in front of her. She doesn't know what the hell's going on. That call really punched me pretty good. And we had of course, your Monday morning quarterbacks from up above saying, hey, why did you guys make these decisions? These types of things. And, we have to go with the information that was given to us. And after that, my lieutenant that I talked to, she said, Travis, you really need to go get some help. This shit's bothering you like I've never seen it bother you. So I make this appointment for March of 2021, and no shit, like I'm the on-call team leader this week. We have 3 team leaders and we rotate every 3 weeks you're on. I'm pulling into this counselor's office and a barricade kicks out. Of course, I can't let the shit go. So I get a hold of the counselor, I say, I'm sorry, I'm the on-call team leader. I got to head back to Mesa. I'll have to reschedule. We go back, barricades, typical barricade. It lasts like 4 hours. We had to gas the guy out, get him out. All good, easy day. When we go back home, I had showered, just sat down for dinner. My lieutenant calls me, says, hey, there's a hostage rescue. Little girl had come out of a house. She had already been shot once by her dad, but she was able to exit, makes it to a neighbor. And she says, hey, my mom's still in there and my 18-year-old sister. So, of course, we're going. Information's rolling as we're on our way. With the information we had, there's no way we're going to set up for a deliberate. This is going to be a hasty. We're going to end up going in pretty quick. So I get there, grab my guys, and we make a plan to go. We could get up to the back of the house. We're going to do a shotgun breach to the patio door, go in and make entry. We do this, get in there, find the suspect dead, mom dead, and the 18-year-old girl had been shot and killed in her bed. Hopefully she was still asleep. But the scene was just disgusting. There was blood everywhere. He had shot the little girl, smashed her head through drywall. She fought her way out. There's handprints and blood everywhere. Just shocking. And it hit me hard. And all I'm thinking about is my guys that are in there with me, because I got a couple of the younger guys on the team. You've coming from law enforcement, how when you have big scenes, a lot of guys come in there and they want to hey, I want to see what this is. A lot of it's like this weird how we do it as police officers, and some of it's for training. It was the first time ever I come out on the porch and I had guys from our team they're going to come in. I literally am yelling, get the fuck back, because I didn't want anybody else to see what was inside. And that was the first time I ever did that. It was pretty nasty and it was affecting a lot of team guys. So they took us offline for about, I think it was 24 hours. They said, okay, these guys need a break. We had been super busy. This had obviously hit the guys, and it hit me pretty hard. And so this was on a Tuesday. So I had rescheduled and got in to see my counselor on Wednesday. And I go the next day. I never in my life had done this, but I spilled my guts, told her everything from 2016, and she immediately took me offline. Like, yeah, you're done. For right now, we need to get you stabilized. I mean, I was in crisis. Suicide was on the table, those types of things. And so, go through a pattern of care, get me stabilized. She works with a psychiatrist, get me on some meds to get me sleep, because I wasn't sleeping right, those types of things. And yeah, for the next year, about 6 months into it, of going 2 days a week into counseling, I wasn't working, I was on short-term disability. I made the decision that this 24 years has been enough, and talked with my labor organization, and I went down the route of seeking a medical retirement. And so I'm here now, and this really started, I take it back to when I went to tell my team what was going on with me. They knew I wasn't working and they didn't know all the details. So I explained it. And that day that I told them, I had one guy come up to me afterwards, said, Travis, said, I'm struggling with some stuff, and thank you so much for leading the way. And he goes in and gets help. And now there's been 4 or 5 guys on my team now that they seek regular care, and they're still operating efficiently, but they knew they needed to deal with their shit. And so, yeah, that's how this all started.
I don't want to get too off topic, but I want to just go back a little bit to talk about a few things. I think there's value to be had from this podcast and people who are listening. Earlier, you talked about making entry without a warrant, and this is truly a good judgment call, especially based on the Fourth Amendment. And I try to say this because I want people to not be hasty in making a decision to save somebody's life. You had a type of call that came in, was not an anonymous tipster, and it ended up being a in-person reporting party who had concern. This is a citizen who had concern. So you have a guy out there corroborating details. You got all you need. You got all the probable cause in the world. You go there. As you go there, the thing continues to unfold. The details are matching what's been sold to you. And you go in and you say this girl's life. Any hesitation could have been detrimental. So my hat's off to you. And it's further is the importance of knowing what you're doing, know what you can do, and not knowing these things could cost people their lives.
Correct.
That's the first one. The second thing that comes to my mind is I literally just read an article and I just put it on Instagram about the Democratic person who is running, and it's not like a Democratic, she's running on a Democratic ticket to be the district attorney in Maricopa County, Arizona. Already funded the police $25 million in Phoenix, I believe.
Right. Mm-hmm.
When you ask about or want to wonder why police need overfunding, it's for things like this. It's not about your political agenda. It's the lives that are at stake in the field. So when I'm so against these people, there's a reason why. It's actually not about me. It's about the purpose and the point, because I have children.
Yes.
Do you have kids?
I do. I have two boys.
So I have to imagine that this is probably, had to hit home as a father.
Oh, it did for sure. And again, I had never, you always, and I'm sure you've seen it. You'd have guys that maybe they just had a child a few months ago and they go to a SIDS death, something like that, and it just affects them in a different way.
It's different.
But I'd never had that, thankfully. But it totally changed my outlook on how, kids and what we have to be for them because there's so much shit out there and the stuff that the normal public, I used to say that I didn't want them to know these things. However, with this push that goes on, like you talk about, hey, we want to defund the police, things like that. Maybe they need to realize the things that the officers are out there doing to protect the people that are in their, their districts, where they work, their cities, because you have to know that that's why we need law enforcement. But with my boys, the way it affected me, especially that last one with the 18-year-old girl, just to know that she had lost her life because whatever this asshole decided, this father that day, that, well, if he couldn't get his way, then he's going to take out his whole family. Like, who the fuck are you to be doing these things? And just, it's just incredible, man. Cause I couldn't imagine, cause you want to compare, like, what would ever bring a father to do these things?
This reminds me of the story. I don't know if you've seen it, where a kid is kidnapped. They call a city to go check on the car at the hotel. And so the city, the patrol guy goes out there, goes, yeah, there's nothing going on. The car is there, but he's not there. They don't even go inside and look. They don't give a shit. And that agency sends their people up to go get that girl. And they made an exigent entry into that hotel room and rescued her. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do.
I think about that a lot.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think about, as a police officer, how do you live with yourself doing this job so half-assed?
Exactly.
Like when you're it's dependent on you to save somebody's life. That was a kid's life that we almost lost. But fortunately, somebody at the other agency just, did not consider that to be something they would accept as an answer and sent their people up there. And you know what? Listen, hats off to them. I recently we showed a video in a class of mine, and guy pulls a gun on the cop, starts getting into pursuit. And I said to these guys, I go, guys, listen, if a sergeant or a lieutenant got on the call, and if this guy just pointed a 357 at me on a traffic stop and said, terminate the pursuit, I'd probably be losing my job over it, because I'm not terminating shit. I'm just not. And it's not because of my ego. It's because the next cop is going to be the victim of this guy. So I already know what I'm dealing with. That's me. I'm not saying listen to me, put that in your brain, make those decisions. I'm saying there are certain times where I'm not listening.
Big thing I would teach or talk to my new guys about, let's take a domestic. A lot of officers or salty guys are like, how can we get through this domestic without really investigating? So I would tell my young guys, I want to ask you this. If we don't investigate this right, and we come on tomorrow or get a phone call tomorrow to say that suspect killed that victim, could you live with yourself? Because I know I couldn't. So first of all, if you're working for me, we're going to investigate those. And I want that becoming your way of life. Like, yeah, it may be shitty. You may have 10 minutes left on your shift. I don't care. But you signed up for this. And that's what the public, expects of us.
I have more questions.
Yeah.
What happened to the guy? What happened to the girl?
So he's in prison now, finally. It took quite a while. Yeah, he got, I think it was 23 years. So, which isn't enough in my opinion. And mom got somewhere around the 13, I think it was. So.
And what happened to her?
She's in prison as well.
The little girl.
Oh, the little girl. So that's a good story. So, you know that with dealing with foster care, that sometimes these foster care families say, yeah, I'm there if you have like these tragic cases. Like there's some foster care families that, yeah, we don't want real issues or anything like that. Well, they had a family like that. The family that took her in that initial time after she was released from the hospital for quite a few days, they ended up adopting her.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah, so she's with the family now. And man, I'm just hoping, like I've talked to my therapist about it, and they're, kids are extremely resilient. I can tell you that day, one of the biggest things to me that I remember, there was no emotions in her. So I'm hoping that God somehow protected her mind, that she is able to move through this and not have lifelong repercussions. And I don't, I haven't had any contact with her since. There's part of me that maybe someday I would like to, but I'm just so thankful that, yeah, she's doing extremely well now.
You ever call the parents and find out?
Yeah. I have not. I have ways to do that. I just have not. My therapist and I have worked through that a couple times on what it would look like. I have these weird, visions of meeting her in a park someday. And maybe I don't even have to meet her, but just to see her in a new light, would be awesome. And I'm hoping someday that can happen. So
you're just going along with the therapist's advice at the moment, which is smart.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Listen, you don't have to tell me. I know the therapist's advice is super important, and that's why they're there. And I always tell people, I'm an open book. I'm going to go to therapy once a week. I'm not somebody, I think that what I'm going to say is I think everybody needs to see a therapist if you have the ability to do so. Unfortunately, some people don't have the means to get the right therapist, but it's just not for everything in my life, just for certain things in my life. And to help me try to understand some stuff, to make it easier, and to be honest with you, to support other people more appropriately. It's really not about me. It's about me being trained on how I'm supposed to help others.
And really, you're leading by example, because if the people that are surrounding you see that you're willing to I'm going to go because they look at you, you're a successful guy, have your own business. Look at what that's doing and setting the example, which I think we all should be doing. And that's what I'm trying to do now.
Yeah, I've only been to therapy. This year was my first year going. Life events sparked that. And, it's crazy. I wear this shirt with the police logo on it. And if you ever see me in real life, I scream, that's a fucking cop right there. But I don't wear the logo because I do it because of branding. We do a lot of videos in the office. Right. On my days off, I'm not walking around in police shirts. No offense if you are. I just don't. I'm retired now as well, so I don't want to prompt or promote. This is just me. So, well, you have to promise me that when you do find out, that you'll reach back out, because I'm curious to know what happens to the girl, and I'm going to pray for her tonight myself.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Unfortunately, and fortunately, that the moment that you told this story, I don't think will ever escape my mind in my life, and if it had that much impact on me just in you explaining it, I can't imagine what it's like experiencing it. And I'm very thankful that I got out of this profession or this career without having to deal with anything like that.
One thing that really hit me is during the retirement process, we have to go through, they're called independent medical examiners. So I have my therapist and my psychiatrist, but the retirement board sets up 2 different other evaluations to determine, is this post-traumatic stress going to be long-term? Should he still be working? Well, the second one I had, and it was on Zoom because we were just, there's still the weird COVID stuff and all that. And she actually started crying. And she said, that has never happened to me before. And she said, Travis, she said, I am shocked that you've made it another 6 years after this happened. And so to me, yeah, and everyone says that. And it is, I describe it, it was soul shocking. And it changed me a lot. I went through a long time where whether I tried to tell myself I didn't believe in God, I was angry at God because I couldn't believe that this type of thing was going on and it was allowed to happen, which was just crazy. But I've worked through all that now. But yeah, absolutely soul shocking.
Not to bring it up or try to provoke anything that's unnecessary, but to remind everybody who's listening to this, think about the things that are going on right now. Yes. That we don't know about, or we never knew about and that
Mhm.
we have a good shot of maybe even stopping some of those things from occurring. That's why you got to show up again with this, with an attitude, a can-do attitude, that don't worry about what's going on in the four walls of the police department. You know what I mean? Like, as long as you could look yourself at the end of the day in the mirror and say, I cared enough to care. It's a big deal. Earlier, you said, about, is something wrong with me? How come things don't affect me? The same thing. And then we always seem to find that one thing that kind of gets us. But one thing I used to tell myself to get through some of those tough calls was find strengths in other weaknesses. And they need you to be here for them. Yes. So I would, one call that I recall when I really ingested this, it was a DOA. And I remember pulling up, and of course, it was an older guy, and I've had several before this. And I had seen the senior meals thing outside of his house. They didn't call, but they kept leaving those things outside. So they're stacked up. A woman's out there, and I said, what makes you think that something's wrong? She said, well, typically I talk to him, da-da-da-da. Did you go inside the house and look for him? And she said, no, I don't want to go in. And I responded to her, I said, I don't either, but I guess it's going to be me, huh?
Right.
For me, those calls, I never enjoyed them. I found them to be heinous at times. I'm not one of those people who was very curious about what things look like. I would tell people, I don't need to see it. You're good. You can just tell me about it. I mean, people can't unpack how creepy it is to walk around a house, and albeit not a bigger house, trying to find a dead body. There's no trauma to it. It's just, I see the guy, I'm like, all right. Yeah, it's a fucking weird thing. I mean, there he is. He slumped over downstairs in the basement. Thank God he had the air conditioning on blast. And he's just leaned over. I touch his arm. He's ice cold. And that was one of the last significant calls I had. But I've seen some fucked up shit. And I think everybody goes through that. But, you try to find some comfort in knowing that, you know what? Like, it's not that this is what we signed up for. It's God chose me. I have to be there for these people because they don't have anybody else. So, which leads to my next thing, which is an interesting topic, because I heard you say it earlier, maybe not in these words, but I'm going to ask you this question, maybe give it an example, because I think this is something that's very, very concerning for a lot of people. Me having experienced some of this in my personal life. What's the detriment of suppressing trauma? You continue to shove a trauma down and not deal with it. What happens?
So my therapist describes it. Everyone is different. We only have so much space. And if you don't deal with calls that are significantly impacting you, or some that she lives by the rule of thumb, if you're still thinking about things as you go to bed or pondering on the call 3 days afterwards, you should probably go have a checkup, have a conversation with a therapist just to see, hey, am I working through this right? But as you push it down, it's going to bleed out in other ways, whether it's anger towards your family, anger towards the public that you're trying to help, angry towards administration, and just overall stress and the abuse on our bodies, from drinking to try to cope with it, to lack of sleep. It's just, the impact is never ending. And that's why I'm trying to be a big advocate now of saying that it's okay to just, even if you don't think the call is taking you, off your feet, go discuss it with someone. And our administrators and executive staff, they need to be willing to let our people go and do that. So
how do you think that the PTSD and the experiences that you had have impacted your family? And I do want to, if you want to talk about your first divorce.
Right.
And if there's any correlation to that, but as a father, namely, what do you think it changed about the way you interact with your kids?
Yeah, the first divorce was a lot of other things, but I specifically can talk about my kids. And it's funny because, as your children get older, you can start having more intentional conversations with them. So my boys, they know all what I've gone through, and I've had to ask for forgiveness at times because I know that because I was dealing with shit inappropriately, I didn't have the patience that I needed with them. We laugh about some of the stuff now about how I was so anal about things because I try to keep everything so perfect in my personal world, whether it's how the house is clean, doing this or that. because I knew I couldn't deal with anything outside the lines because everything from work was overflowing. So yeah, I've had to go to them and apologize, but it's good for them because they know now that, hey, I mean, they always saw dad as this big, gigantic police officer, the big SWAT guy. They'd come to our, SWAT family days, and that was just who their dad was. But to tell them that, yeah, these things, they broke me because I didn't handle them appropriately, I think it's super impactful. So I'm trying to use that now, but I definitely have some regrets because of, the way that I treated them, or, just lost my shit. I wasn't abusive or anything like that, but just, angry outburst or things that were just foolish.
Have they forgiven you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, that's why we joke about some of the stuff now about, man, Dad, you were so hardcore about something that now I even see it like, that didn't mean shit in the whole scheme of things,
What moment do you remember saying to them that I'm sorry?
It's only been, man, within the last year that I've, as I've worked, I mean, I had to get myself well and stabilized first. And then you start pondering about how could things have been different those, last 6 years. And so those are at the top. My two boys, what could I have done differently for them if I would have been handling the things going on inside of me because of that call? So yeah, we've had some good times, and I think they're better for it. I know I'm better for it. And we just learn and go on from there.
It's amazing once there's water under the bridge, especially with a father-son relationship, how to move forward and have a great life together. And
absolutely,
you don't want to have regrets of who you were to your kids later on in life. Absolutely. And so anybody who's listening to this should really think about, what do your kids see you as? What's their perspective of you? Who do they need you to be? Who do they want you to be? I can't be everything for my kids, but I can be the best that I can be for my kids. My one asked me, can you coach my baseball team? And I say, I can't, buddy. I'm not here enough. It's not, I will help out when I'm there and we can play at home, but unfortunately, this is daddy's life. Daddy's on the road. Daddy travels once a week and goes and teaches police officers. And that's that balance for me of, it's not about me when I show up somewhere. It's not even about my family, but it is about the people that show up and need me to show up to learn the things they need to do this job safely. And that's part of the deal. And I constantly, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I'm constantly adjusting it. I'm constantly playing with the dials of life to try to balance it out appropriately. And sometimes I get it right. Sometimes I don't, but my intentions are correct and they're true and they mean, and they're well. I have good intentions, and I'm just not criticized or not criticized. I'm doing the best that I can.
Right.
So what are you doing now with this PTSD?
What am I doing now? So yeah, it's pretty amazing. So literally when I was driving up with a trailer load of stuff and my wife's behind me in the U-Haul on the way to Montana, I had become friends with a buddy of mine that's now the undersheriff in Flathead County, which is in Kalispell area, Montana. And he called me and he said, hey, I know you're coming up to Montana. Would you come and do a debrief at this tactical leadership conference that we're having in Kalispell? It'd be for team leaders, team commanders, things like that. So I get the phone call and I yeah, no worries. I've got debrief saved. I can do that. But I hang up the phone call, and when you're driving 1,700 miles by yourself, you have a lot of time to think. And I said, and he knew my story. I just recently told him. So I call him back and I said, Wayne, what do you think about me doing something on post-traumatic stress? And he's like, hell yes, let's do it. And so I had 2 weeks to prepare, get up to Montana, head up to Kalispell. There's 75 people there, I think. And I give this presentation, and I was blown away by people that came up after me or after the presentation were just thank you for being honest and sharing your story. I'm dealing with this and that. And now I've made this huge connection here in Montana. And then from there, because of how well that went there, I was contacted by the director of the National Tactical Officers Association for their annual conference. And so actually it's in 2 weeks, September 25th, my counselor and I are going to do 2 different seminars there. And I'm going to tell my story, and then she's going to be talking side by side about the clinical response how she dealt with things, lessons learned, what we could have done, what I could have done better, what the agency could have done better. So just amazing. And then I'm doing the next week after that, the Montana Chiefs of Police Association is having me come and do a presentation on post-traumatic stress in law enforcement. So, and then it started from, I just do these short videos on my Instagram site, just talking about things that I've been through, things that you can do to protect yourself. And I mean, not a crazy amount of followers, but it is a miraculous that I get these messages from people I would never expect that said, hey, this really spoke to me. I'm going to go get some help. Thank you. So as long as I can do it, I'm going to keep, if I can help one more person, I'm just going to keep going with it.
What's the Instagram where they can find you?
my_.arena. So, and there's a significance for that because one of the first things my counselor did, she's amazing, that she realized that when we come forward, part of the thing, we have a lot of shame. Like, hey, I'm saying that, you know, I got my butt kicked here by something mental. So she did this meditation thing talking about, it was the speech from the man in the arena and talking about, you know, and putting that around how we're going to battle now through this counseling. And so that's how that came to be.
The man in the arena hangs on the wall here.
Love it. Love it. So It's huge.
I think it really speaks volumes to those who it reflects upon. And
yes,
I think it probably does more for the person in the arena than the person on the outside of the arena, because I still don't think they could hear the noise. I think they are the noise.
Correct.
So doing something bigger than yourself. That's what we come down to at the end of this whole thing, is that you have found a lot of purpose in life happening for you and not to you.
Correct. That's a good
So if these things didn't happen, you wouldn't be in the position that you're in to be the person that other people needed you to be. Like, you know, find strengths and other weaknesses.
Right.
Interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
It's full circle, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
Well, what else do you have? I don't know where else to go with this. This is pretty fucking good.
Yeah. Hey, man, I just encourage other people that, you know, as far as executive level staff goes, you've got to create a culture in your agencies to smash the stigma. We cannot go on with having people not feeling comfortable that, hey, if they're dealing with problems, they can come forward. And there's so much surrounding that. Like, yeah, I know executive staff, I've never been a chief of police. You're always worried about, well, who's going to fill shifts? Who's going to do that? What if this guy comes forward and they need to be off work? To be honest with you, we can worry about those things afterwards, but you really need to be taking care of your people. And they need to know that they're not going to be shunned or looked upon poorly if they say, I'm struggling and I need to get some help. And then those out there that are struggling, even if you don't feel comfortable with your own administration, there are so many organizations out there now that are willing to help that you can go to. You can contact me. I have contacts with different organizations. I just want people to be okay, because I mean, you see the suicides that we're having in law enforcement. We've got to somehow change that culture and allow people to know they can go get help.
I don't have much to say in that realm, in that space, other than if anybody's listening to this and having difficulty, there is help, there's avenues. It's a matter of, I've been told that phone call is the hardest part.
Yes, correct.
So make that phone call and just know that the world would be a better place with you, not without you. And the despair you're going to put your family through, experiencing that kind of trauma is unfair. And it is a selfish thing. And I know that people may be in a lot of pain. I don't understand. But what I can understand is that we do need you. And you've been dealt some cards that aren't fair. And you have to learn how to sort through those cards and get yourself back, because there are a lot of people who have come back from that. And life's wonderful, man. And I just think about, like, what's worst case scenario? I'm a bartender on a beach in Florida with like white sands. Like I'm living very, very minimally. But every day I get to look at the ocean and meet new people and just enjoy nature. Fuck, man. Like anything besides that, you know?
There is life outside of law enforcement. So if it means you coming forward that maybe it's time for you to move on, there's other things and a lot of happiness out there.
Look, it's an important job and you should have a lot of passion while you do it, but it's not the only job and it's not the only answer. And the reality of it is, at the end of the day, it is a job. Yes. And if this job is getting you to the point where you don't feel like you are able to handle it, there's no shame in saying I was either going to kill myself or go do something else, and nobody's going to shun you. And I've seen it. I've seen people leave this and told me that, like, I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
It takes a big man or woman to actually admit that and do what's best for them, because it's your life, not anybody else's. So don't worry about the judgment of other people. Worry about you.
Yes, sir.
Well, Mr. Gribble, it was a real pleasure meeting you. And sometimes we'd never know what we're going to get out of our podcast guests, but this one was a pleasant surprise, because although it was a sad story, I think it has a very happy ending. And
yes,
if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for that call that you made that day, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
Thank you.
So you're the perfect example of what we need to be on every level, even afterwards.
I appreciate that.
All right, brother. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, sir. All right, I appreciate you.
Travis, be in touch with us. All right, we'll do some more stuff in the future. Will. Yeah,
absolutely. I'd love that, man. Okay, thank you. Brother. I appreciate your time.
No, dude, this is great. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you,
buddy. Bye.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Guys, if you're in an area where you're trying to get to our classes, but we're not close to you, fret not. We actually have on-demand training at streetcop.com. You can take that course online right now, and then you could attend that training in the future at no additional cost. You can redeem your voucher, so you get 2 for the price of 1. We don't want to deny you the ability to take this training now, especially knowing that it can keep you safe, at a very minimum, putting bad guys in jail where they belong, and at the maximum, going home to your family. Check out streetcop.com for that offer.